because he knew I was going to screw this up. One week he was giving me props, being like, man, it sounded great last week. And then our engineer Drew walked in and he's like, yeah, you screwed up last week. I'm like, son of a, come on.
Listen, I don't care how the intro went last week. I don't care because you know why? David Perron was on our podcast and it was awesome. Like, it was so I never go back and listen to my own stuff by and large, interviews or shows or anything, because I find myself to be very annoying. But last week I went back and listened, and he was so amazing. He just could not have been better to talk to about that Stanley Cup run and just in general. I mean, I've always liked David Perron, but that puts him up in like my favorite Blues ever kind of, category.
Yeah, and I told you guys afterwards, he shot me a text that said, hey, had fun, thanks. Usually I get a text that says, lose my number. A little bit different this time.
That's pretty great, man. It was just a lot of fun. And so even though, we had that happen, but we had that happen, the day of or the day after the big Alex Steen, Doug Armstrong kind of restructuring of the front office sort of thing. So we didn't really have a chance to talk about that. And, oh, yeah, by the way, the Stanley Cup Finals are not over as much as I thought they would be. So we got a lot of stuff to discuss here this afternoon, boys.
Didn't even mention Scott Perunovich getting a contract extension. Look at this guy over here, just forgetting
it's
about
on
Scotty
his
P.
sheet. Actually, he did bring it up earlier.
It's on the list, man.
Scott P. Okay. Hey, I'm going to just sit down and shut the hell up.
Wait. He wrote Scott P., and we'll talk about him later in his contract, but I want to see if Donnie knows how to spell it. Do you know how to spell Perunovich?
Dude, I went to community college and flunked out. No, I do. I absolutely do not.
Take one stab at it. Let's hear it.
P-E-R. Hold on. Let me write it out. P-E-R-U-N-V-I-C-H. P-E-R-U-N-V-I-C-H. Perunovich.
Then you just missed an O, right?
Perunovich.
And then
Perunovich.
H at the end.
C-O-R. You going to the mall later. That's
hey,
what
just
I was
call
wondering.
him what Peru called Perun.
Perun.
There you get the
Scotty P.
P-E-R-U-N.
No regrets. Scotty P. That's the way you go with it.
I feel that Alex is a little aggro today. Am I judging that wrong?
I got a lot of people on their YouTube stream yesterday saying that I'm an angry individual, so I'm trying to turn over a new leaf, but obviously it didn't start off well.
They're saying you're an angry individual?
Know. I mean, I'm angry when I'm on with BK, but that's his fault, not my fault. Not that angry.
I just want to know what BK is saying about a new Kansas City Chiefs player getting arrested every other week. I'm just curious as to how he's kicking that around.
He's probably still talking about how the Bills won't beat him. That's what he does.
You're right.
He just finds a way to just jab it right in.
And it's fair, too, and it stops me in my tracks. Absolutely, completely. Okay, so let's just start here real quick with the finals. What an amazing game last night. Just a really fun hockey game to watch. And I thought this series was done. I thought that Edmonton would have their moment in Game 4, win, and then Game 5, Florida wraps it up. They're drunk right now with the Stanley Cup somewhere.
They could still be.
Yeah, they'd be still partying.
But what is going on here, guys? I really, listen, this is the Connor McDavid show. I get that, but I still cannot believe and do not believe that Florida does not win this and are not the better team, but they are not looking like it.
I personally, watching that last night, felt like Florida fell into the Edmonton trap, where Florida tried to play Edmonton's game and not play their game. Like that one last night turned into a track meet. And what Florida didn't do in the first 3 games was make it a track meet. It was more of a get the puck away from me type of style. That's why you saw all 5 of their top scorers not score goals, because they weren't letting them play in a track meet. And then you turn it into a little bit more of Edmonton gets to show off their speed. You start making turnovers. Florida was doing that in the 3rd period when they were pulling the goaltender, trying to force plays, which you do in desperation situations. But special teams, Edmonton finally came through, which they didn't do in the first 3 games. And then you turned it into a track meet, and you start to see a little bit more holes with Sergei Bobrovsky, which was something I was concerned with. All that being said, I never thought Edmonton was going to be able to pull this off. I thought they were weaker than Florida, and I didn't think that they had the full 200-foot game that Florida does.
Well, what do you think now?
Now I think Florida should be shaking a little bit, because now you're going back to Edmonton in another do-or-die situation. Your best hope is if you're Florida, you could find a way to just shut them down in Edmonton with all of the stress and the expectation of finding a way to force a Game 7. Because if that goes back to Florida for Game 7, man, that's that's devil mode Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl engaged that I'm not sure I want to mess with.
And guys, the worst part is that there's 2 days off. If you're Florida,
Oh, I know.
you had a chance, like we just said, to party on the beach last night. That doesn't happen. Now you got the 6-hour flight to Edmonton and 2 days to sit here and stew about this before the next game on Friday. And then a couple more days off before Game 7, if there is a Game 7, not until Monday. So it looks like there's a long way to go in this, and who would have thought that just a week ago? Alex, I agree with all your points there, and just to add to it, some untimely penalties by Florida. Matthew Tkachuk, we love him. He takes the embellishment there when they're getting ready to go on the power play late, so that was a tough situation. The shorthanded goals, Edmonton gets one early last night, and then, as you mentioned, Bobrovsky, I thought he was going to walk away with the Conn Smythe here.
I did too.
And now all of a sudden he's at a couple games where it hasn't been good. So it's so weird to sit here and think that a week ago we just thought that Florida was going to sweep this thing, and now we're on the verge of it being tied
And
up.
I mean, in our defense, Stuart Skinner has not been a goaltender you look at and you're like, oh, this guy's going to get a Stanley Cup. But he's been such a Jekyll and Hyde goaltender to where first 3 games you're like, dude, this guy can't stop a puck. And then it was Game 4 where it was, where did this guy come from? And then the last game where, he gave up some goals, but he made some big-time saves. And that's goaltending in general where you get hot streaks. But they just did not have the makings to me of a team. I felt like they had the easiest path to the Stanley Cup final of having, their toughest matchup was probably Dallas. Mm-hmm. Vancouver gave them a good run, but you started off with the LA Kings to where Dallas had to go through the gauntlet of the Central Division, and then you're looking at what Florida had to do with Boston, with the New York Rangers, with Tampa Bay. I thought Edmonton was kind of, not gifted, but that was the easier path, and I thought they were going to run into it, but apparently not.
Guys, one of the questions that I had for both of you is, what does this trip to the Cup Finals and this playoff season do for the next contract for Vladimir Tarasenko? Does it change it at all? I feel as though, I mean, is Vladimir going to get anything more than like a 2-year deal at this point? How do you gauge how he's played in this playoffs? Maybe just kind of throw that out there for the former Blue.
I personally feel like, he's done a really good job of turning his role into where he's at in his career. Because most guys don't do that. Like, you see guys that still have that superstar mentality, that expect to be the superstar, and when they don't play out that way, then they start to fall off and you don't get those contracts and you kind of see them fade away. Vladdy went from being that guy that was viewed as a top-line player. When he went to the Rangers, he dropped down a role. Ottawa, he became the complementary piece, and he's carried that to Florida. I think he's turned himself into the perfect Brandon Saad, in my opinion, to where you just plug him in on a third line for a contending team and he's going to be a good asset. I don't know if he gets a 2-year deal. He's 35?
32, actually.
32. Okay, so he's younger.
Yeah, I looked it up as you were talking there, and that pains me. 32 years old. He's going to be 33 in December. I remember when he showed up when he was 18 years old. You can't do that to me. But 32 years old.
JR had a full head of hair when he showed up.
JR is crying now. I hope you're watching.
Thanks a lot. But I think we can break it down like this. You look at Tarasenko, he's had 4 agents in the past 3 years, and the reason is he's overvaluing how much he's worth at this point in his career. He did get the 1-year $5 million from Ottawa, which transferred to Florida, and now he'll be a free agent. Being 32, he'll be 33 in December. I think Donnie probably could be right. A couple years, nobody's going to give him the money he wants and extend him beyond age 35. Like, he's not going to get $5 million, $6 million, and also, by the way, get the contract that takes you to 36, 37. You know what, guys? I don't want to stir it up here.
Oh, stir it, JR.
Could he come back to St. Louis?
Get the heck out of here. No way. I didn't know you were going to stir it like that.
They need somebody to come in and fill in a gap here until Snuggerud and these guys are ready. Guess who's going to be the GM here in a couple years? No. Guess who's involved in the decision-making right now?
And I'm saying this in the nicest way possible. Did they get along, though?
No. Actually, I don't know in terms of any personal relationship. But all I'm saying is that Tarasenko has always said that he loves St. Louis, and look, we saw it with David Perron come back 22 times.
That's the one you need to stir the pot on, JR. That's the one.
I did. I think I have that in an article coming up here pretty soon.
Do you? That sounds about right.
But I thought that I thought one of the things was that that Tarasenko wanted to live in Florida or wanted to live on the East Coast.
If they have so many guys that they need to re-sign this year,
see, I actually think they're more likely to sign him, Florida, than the other route, because I think they're going to move Sam Bennett after this offseason because he's going to be more money than they're able to pay. They've got to get Sam Reinhart locked up. You've got to re-sign, I think, this Anton Lindell, who's an RFA, and then you got your defenseman. He's cheap, more cheap than what Sam Bennett would cost. So I think Florida goes elsewhere, and they keep that guy because he's a perfect third-line winger for them that you can make for $2 million in a full season, maybe 20 goals.
But if they win the Cup, and if, Vladdy obviously has a home in the Miami area, so he'd like to keep the family down there.
Course.
What if he says, I'll come cheaper than
to Florida?
To Florida, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think they take it immediately because that's a 20-goal scorer for a third line who could play top six if you need him to, and it's worked out well for him. So that's the part that I would.
And what do you think the money is? You think that's 4 to 5 a year-ish, or is that too high?
If he would take it, but I would think that
I think
he's not going to take less than $4 million.
I was going to say, and I think Florida's probably going to want a little less than that. Someone will give him more than that because everybody wants offense, and especially I thought he was older than that. So 32 years old. Sorry, Jared, not to bring that up again. 32 years old. I mean, that you signed for a 2 or 3 year deal if you believe he can be consistent.
The Blues signed Scott Perunovich to a 1-year deal. They announced that just the other day. Gentlemen, I think that this probably goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway because I feel as though that I'm the master of the obvious in this room. But make or break year for Scott Perunovich as a St. Louis Blue, right? If he does not stay healthy, if he does not, have a great season, this is going to be the end of the run for Scotty P, right?
Scott Perunovich, Perunovich.
No O. Scott Perunovich. Just make it easier on yourself.
But it feels like we've been saying make or break year for about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And I know he's 25. Wrote the article yesterday.
Look at you with your
25.
age just nailing it right now. How old am I?
See, here's the one.
Hit it. Come on. You want me to take the hat off? You see the gray hair?
31.
32.
32. 30.
Lucky bastard.
Yeah, no doubt. But with Perunovich, here's the thing is, so my boss sent me a question yesterday, and he said, do you think that the Perunovich signing signals anything coming up? And I started to, on my laptop, I don't think that this means anything significant could happen as a result of this signing. And then I go, wait a minute. Last year, the day they signed Scott Perunovich, the next day they were trying to trade
Torrey Krug.
Yeah. So let's be on the lookout today for some news.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. But I don't think it really signifies anything. I think that he's back. They want him back, even though he's had a tough career so far as injuries. And even when he's healthy, he's still looking for that first goal, which absolutely blows my mind because he's an offensive guy. He's still looking for that first goal. He definitely needs to get the shooter's mentality more. But you look at this defense, and I think it's going to change. I don't think it's going to look like this on opening night, but you have Leddy and Parayko, you have Krug, and you have Falk, and you have Perunovich, Tucker, and Kessel right now. And, whether that's a 5% chance it looks like that on opening night or not, they have their guys. And I think we all expected Perunovich to come back. Mm-hmm. And I think, it's going to be a make or break. Like, he's got to show even more this year. I know he played 54 games last year, but he's got to show more this year if he wants to continue to be in the plans.
I'll say it again. That's a small defense. And I know we've talked about that before, and I always go back to what Craig Button had told us on BK and Ferrario at the beginning of last season when we were asking him, what does this team do to try and make a transition? And he said, you're too small. Craig Button told us, nobody fears going to the front of the net against the Blues. Yeah. And maybe that can change. Torrey Krug played with some attitude and some pissed-off attitude last year, which is something we all loved to see. Yeah. But if that's what you're going on the left side of Perunovich, Leddy, and Krug, that's 3 guys under the size of 6'1". And it was very apparent last year that you couldn't defend the net the way that you needed to. And now watching the playoffs, and we always talk about the playoffs being a copycat league, both of these teams, I think, maybe have one player that's below the height of 6'2". Now, I'm not saying you could figure it out. Drew Bannister obviously figured out something that worked for Scott Perunovich when he was with the minors. Something worked there for a little bit of a stretch, and then it fell off towards the end. But I personally, and I know where they're at, the time frame that Doug Armstrong has kind of pointed out with this, but that's still a small defensive group if you're wanting to compete in the Central Division next year.
That's a really good point, too, because if you get matched up with any one of these super big, heavy teams over the course of a 7-game series, they could pull a reverse on what we did to people in 2019, mm-hmm. right? And just pummel us until... pummel us into submission as the series goes on.
And plus, you can talk about the Blues prospects that are on the way, and there's a lot of them, right? And we know the names, the Snuggeruds and the Dvorskys and those guys, but beyond that, you got the Stenbergs and, Lindstein's on defense. But there isn't some big punishing defenseman on the way. You had Kessel kind of surprise some people, but he's still a steady guy. Tucker, we know Tucker is a physical guy, but he's not the big, lanky guy where the Blues had all that success.
My boy Leo Loof didn't follow through for me in the minors last year. I thought that was going to be my big nasty dude that was going to come up. He didn't get there.
So you can sit here and say, okay, they've got XYZ forwards coming up, and we're going to be able to wait for them, but you can't do that with defense. So that's why I think Doug's going to have to just continue to explore, find the right deal, find a move that's going to bring in one or two.
Now's the offseason to do it, too, though. I think you're going to have a ton of – and I know every year you have a lot of guys that come out of the woodworks that are willing to be traded, but there's a lot more guys, I think, that are available that match what you're looking for than years past in terms of a left-handed defenseman.
I love the offseason.
Me too.
I love this.
Florida could have just closed it out last year. We'd be having a different car last night.
We could already be moving on this. Okay, so as this is being announced last week, as far as the succession transfer of power.
Thank God we're on YouTube.
I wonder why all of a sudden I see like some sort of He-Man situation and a big gigantic sword being passed.
I was thinking Wayne's World.
That's even better. But so as this is being announced last week, and I'm watching this, I'm starting to see, okay, well, all right, transition of power, Doug Armstrong, getting a little older, wanting to let somebody younger do it. I'm excited because I love Alex Steen. I love what the potential of what Alex Steen could bring to the table. But as time has gone on, I start to think to myself, is this sort of like the Mike Yeo, Craig Berube, coach
and waiting
sort of situation, which didn't make sense to me at that time and always kind of felt like Yeo had a short leash. And I'm not saying that the situation is exactly the same because it's not, but it does feel a little funky as to who is going to have the last say truly.
Yeah.
Because it seems to me that this is going to be Doug Armstrong, and then exactly what input is Steiner going to be throwing in there, and then after 2 years, Doug Armstrong, this super powerful sports executive, is all of a sudden going to step back. And I don't know. I'm not saying it won't work. I'm not saying they're not good people. The more I think about it, the more I go, this could present its own series of challenges.
I mean, I had when we saw the announcement, I had so many different thoughts run through my head. The coach in waiting was the first thing I thought of, but to me, and tell me where you guys are, that is a different situation because the coach in waiting felt like it was a disaster waiting to happen because you've got the guy who's giving the final thoughts in game, but then you've got the other coach who's an assistant coach who's going to be the coach a little bit later on. Like this one, Doug Armstrong is the final say for the next 2 years, and it seems, at least the way they've painted it, Steen's not really, he's going to have a say, but it's not going to be like an outspoken vocal say. It's kind of like behind closed doors with the inner circle that Doug Armstrong references, and then Doug Armstrong makes the final decision. The part that I find so interesting is if Doug Armstrong's making decisions not just for this year and next year, but for 4 years from now, for 6 years from now, i.e. the Pavel Buchnevich contract, where does Steen come in with that one? Because, and this is a total hypothetical situation right here, but let's just say Doug Armstrong wants Pavel Buchnevich back, but Alexander Steen's thinking, I want to see this team a little bit of a different area. How do you negotiate that contract? And does that mean that you lose out on that player? Does that cause rifts? Like, there's so much uncertainty here with this. And we actually talked with Carlo Koliakovo yesterday. And the reason I wanted to get him on, one, he played with Steen, but two, he's in Toronto. And he sees the same dynamic right now where it's Brendan Shanahan, the president of hockey operations, Brad Treliving, the general manager. And he said it's a real different situation because they basically have a company that owns them, and so they're the ones that make the final say, and it's two guys that are just discussing. I think that's going to be the dynamic that I'm most intrigued by is this year, fine. Doug Armstrong's got his plans. Steen's learning. Next year, fine. Steen's learning. What happens when you're making decisions for 3, 4, 5 years from now when Steen takes over?
I think it can work, and I'm going to go back to the GM and waiting point, not to rehash what you guys said. But to tell you why I think it's going to work. The reason I think that Doug feels comfortable with the GM in waiting after we witnessed the coach in waiting thing blow up is because the GM in waiting is behind the scenes. It's all like Doug did this with Larry, and Doug really felt like, and you can talk to him today about it, that it really got him up to speed with the entire organization before he had to make those decisions. And in his words, he said everything we did and we talked about was out of the public eye. Larry and I me traveling and watching scout prospects and
Mm-hmm.
so on and so forth. Whereas the Mike Yeo thing was right in front.
You saw it every game.
Yeah, like you had players who were in the locker room and they're like, okay, well, this is an assistant coach and I'm listening to him, but he's the good cop here and he's going to be the bad cop eventually. Like, this is bizarre. So I think that's how they looked at it. So now how that ties into why I think it can work is because I think over time, Doug and Alex are going to, get to a point in their relationship where, things are going to work smoothly and they're going to be able to talk through things. And when they have disagreements, they're going to be able to hash it out and nobody's, there to witness it. And I think that you make a really valid point that just use the Buchnevich contract for a second. Like Doug said it himself a couple days ago at the draft roundtable.
Mm-hmm.
He said, look, I have to talk to the agent about the next 2 years, and then Alex has to talk to him. Like, that's confusing, I think, to the rest of us. But I think when Alex and Doug are talking to the agent, the representative, they can come to a common ground. As an organization, hey, this does not make sense for us to go 6, 7, 8 years. Doug and I, Alex and Doug, talked it out. Doesn't make sense. We're sorry. Love to keep you for 2 or 3 years. Not going to do 6 or 8. What do you think? So on and so forth. So they're going to encounter, I think, a lot of those types of issues along the way. But I think big picture, what Doug wants here, and he said it the other day, I want somebody who can have the vision for this franchise for the next 10 years, 15 years. And that's why he's decided. But I'll add one more thing, is I agree with you. The biggest question to me here is a guy like Doug, who's one of the best in the business, 5 years, yeah, it's a long time, but he's still only 59 years old.
Yeah.
He'll be 65. Like, he's basically choreographing the end here, which it's hard for me to comprehend that he's ready for the end.
Sure. I mean, what is stopping him? And I don't even, man, I don't even mean this in a bad way. Just as a competitor, what is stopping you from reaching the end of this 5-year deal with the Blues and going, I don't think I'm done. I want to go to Toronto if they haven't won, or I don't know, man, wherever that might be. He just seems so freaking competitive and so intense that unless something goes wrong in his, I just can't see him wanting to step away.
I mean, the easy / harsh answer with that is that nothing is stopping him from that. The commitment to St. Louis, which I do think we don't give Doug enough credit for, like, he is committed to the St. Louis Blues. Now, does that change after somebody else has taken over and another team comes calling and offering a ton of money? I mean, I can only put myself in those shoes. Yeah, probably, but that's not Doug Armstrong. The part that I was confused by is because that's where I was. Like, man, there's no way Doug's ready to call it. Like, at that end of the season press conference, just hearing Doug talk about how, I haven't left this team in a better place than where it was, it's like, man, Doug knows that there's competitive edges there, and Doug knows that he wants to see this team through to another winning window and not leave it in the middle of just this unknown. So, I mean, the part that I was like, okay, but what happens is when you're the president of hockey operations? Because I understand, like, when he talked with us last week, the day-to-day stuff is what he's taking a step back from, and that's all of these press conferences. That's all of the meeting with all of these scouts and doing all of this traveling. That's all of that gone to the wayside. But does that mean he still has the final say? Like, is he overseeing it all? So when Steen comes up with a trade proposal or a free agent signing and Armstrong's like, no, I don't want that, does he just kind of come in and say, nix it? Because it didn't seem that way. If it's day-to-day and the team is Alexander Steen's, I'm not sure where Doug keeps that competitive fire.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. I just think that let's rule out, and we'll talk about that in a second, but let's, for this conversation, say that he's not going to try to go somewhere else. Let's just say he's going to stay here. The way Doug said it is this is going to be Alex's team in 2 years.
Yeah.
So the way I interpret that is, yes, he's going to be there for the next 3 years afterwards as president of hockey operations, but I feel like if you listen to him, I think he's professional enough to understand this. He's going to have to be there just to guide Alex and let him make his own decisions. Hey, listen, I've been there. I've been in this exact situation. Here's how it unfolded. I'll give you the information that I think you need, and then you make your decision. That's the way I feel like it's expected to go. Secondly, he's got 2 more years as GM, then 3 years as president of hockey operations. Who's to say he doesn't sign another 2 or 3 year deal after that? If things are going smoothly with Alex, and then he can continue to be the president of hockey operations. You know, if now to have the conversation about him potentially leaving after 5 years, Donnie, you know, I think that would be such a difficult move, and something that would be hard to put on Tom Stillman, because Tom has trusted Doug so much. And if he were here right now, he'd say he's the absolute best. He did not want him to talk to Toronto last year when that job was open.
He said it in the press conference.
Yeah.
We have the best president, or we have the best general manager in the National Hockey League.
He wants him to stay here. So if you're Tom Stillman and you've allowed Doug to create this arrangement where you've got the 2 years, then the 3, you know, if you're Doug in the first or second or third year of that president of hockey operations only job, can you really approach Tom? I know we set this up, but Toronto's open.
Right.
You know, I think I'm going to roll there and see how that looks. No, I think that Tom, you know, contractually, obviously, he'd still be under contract, Doug would be, for the next 3 years, but it'd be a situation, no, like, this is what we set up. This is what I need you to be for Alex. You're staying here.
All right.
Well, real quick, Donnie, the part 2 with that of why I just don't see it happening is because Armstrong is the one that was screaming from the mountaintops for Steen. The quote that really stuck out to me in that initial press conference was Stillman was the one that was like, there's not a lot of experience here. Like, where are we supposed to go with this? And Doug used the quote that said, let's not lose the right guy for the wrong reason, which I did. Like, we're talking all about Doug Armstrong right now. I liked the move of Alexander Steen. I know there were people questioning it. The one thing I know about Steen, just from covering him, and I know you covered him a lot longer than I did, JR, the dude understands what a winning hockey team looks like. Like, he understands what works in a locker room, what doesn't work in a locker room. And it's no coincidence, and Elliot Friedman was talking about this on his podcast, it's no coincidence that, like, half of the league right now are former players that played their last game, like, in 2010, because that might be the way of the National Hockey League, to where the say of the everyday roster of the day-to-day things is coming from somebody who has a pulse of the locker room. Let's also go back to Doug talking about, you know, feeling like you really don't have the pulse of the younger players today,
Yeah.
and it was something he was trying to work towards. Well, now you got a guy who was playing with those guys, 5-6 years ago? I think it's a really good move by the Blues to get somebody who might have a very successful future down the road. The question's going to be, where does he take it when he gets that opportunity? And that's the part that you do get to work under Doug Armstrong for 2 years.
Yeah, and that was one of the first things that I thought of in my overthinking of this was, is this a slight admission by Doug Armstrong that I don't completely understand this new brand of NHLer, and it's probably time for me to get somebody else in to sort of help me in that arena. I'm sure it's tough for that guy outside of his inner circle to ask other people for help, but I just wonder if he was like, I don't get these guys. I don't know what motivates them, and I don't know if I'm ever going to know.
I think it's a super valid point. I'd say this. I think that it enters Doug's mind in terms of, okay, what's the future look like? You know, I love this job, but these kids are getting harder to understand type thing. I don't think that's what knocks him out the door. I don't think that he looks at that situation and goes, you know what, I'm out of here. I just can't handle these young guys anymore. I don't know what makes them tick. You know, Doug's got the personality where, like he said a year ago when he made that statement, you know, he's going to go find out what makes him tick and then just deal with it and adjust and evolve and so on and so forth. So I think that could play a little bit of a role, but I think bigger picture, he just, as he explained the other day, saw how he felt this should move forward for the St. Louis Blues. And, hey, let's give Doug credit. He said it 100 times the other day. Whenever I make a decision, I want to make it what's best for the St. Louis Blues at the end of the day. And this is what he thought for a variety of reasons, including Alex's ability to relate to the young kids.
I will give that guy credit, too, because I can only put myself in those shoes. That would be a very difficult thing for me to do and be like, hey, I don't know if I can do the best of my abilities down the road with this team, and it might be time for somebody else to get an opportunity to bring their best effort to it. Like, that's not an easy thing to do.
Donnie, it's like we can't even relate to Alex some days, right?
It's true.
We don't understand. He comes in and says stuff for, like, these kids.
Well, I mean, if nothing else, I think that the life is a highway situation really speaks to that, like a lot.
You know, here's the thing. Music has evolved, guys, and you need to evolve with it.
Oh, my God.
Just like hockey evolves, you need to evolve with it, Donnie.
Listen.
I don't know if you know this about me, but I host a radio show that's all about music. I evolve with it, you know?
I don't even know what to say.
Donnie, here's what I say. Here's what I say to my kids. Okay, so you and I can sit here and name a ton of artists and music that has stood the test of time.
Uh-huh.
I mean, they're going 40, 50 years, these guys, that we could sit here and rattle off, 10 bands. Alex, who from your generation are we still going to be listening to in 20 or 30 years?
Oh, man.
When I asked my wife this question, she said NSYNC. This is years ago, and I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Nickelback. Nickelback. You'll be listening to Nickelback 40 years from now.
If Chad Kroeger is still able to sing,
And he will be.
then absolutely so.
Yeah.
I'm not a Nickelback hater, though. We've had this conversation before.
Right.
I don't, but okay, I got to touch on this here a little bit. I appreciate and understand that I'm the old guy, all right? 47 years old, going on 48. I listen to more new music than I would bet you any person in this building by like a long shot.
A lot, yeah, for sure.
I do my Sunday night new music show from 7 to 9, and it reminds me of doing my college radio show, and I just love it so much.
So maybe you're the better person to ask. Like, who's going to stand the test of time? Maybe not this guy. He's got...
Well, Foo Fighters.
Rascal
Would
Flatts.
Foo Fighters count as that?
I do love Foo Fighters.
And you know what? And I don't even like Rascal Flatts, but it seems to me that whatever in which that they have done in that country world
will continue.
has provided longevity. I mean, they've been around for a long-ass time.
Since like the mid-90s.
So I mean,
So
they're kind of that.
Let's call Foo Fighters our generation.
A music connoisseur.
Okay.
Foo Fighters.
Well, I didn't know exactly where we were
I'm
there.
kind of in the middle of that Foo Fighters realm.
Okay, so Alex and we're going to get back to hockey in a second.
Maybe.
But Alex and I are going to go see Blink 182.
So pumped.
But we have to figure out a show that we can all go to together.
Okay.
Like whether that be like an amphitheater show or something. That to me would be a lot of fun because we have a very great time together when we're sober. Well, what happens if you throw some beers in there?
That's when we're going to do the Last Minute Blues podcast pool party at my house. JR showing up in a Speedo.
Oh, yeah. Just shallow Hal. I'm doing a cannonball, and the kids are up in the tree.
Hey, man, my above-ground pool can't handle that. Come
I
on
have
now.
not seen that movie in forever.
Phenomenal film, by the way.
Amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing. As far as a couple things blues related, and I don't exactly know what it's called. Is it the Prospect Camp is what we're calling it now? That's coming early in July.
Yeah.
Where you're able to see all of these, the next generation, the Snuggeroods, all of those guys out at Centene. If you are a blues fan, I highly, highly suggest if you've got time, going out and checking
they've got everybody there. Yeah. Was Snuggerud there last year?
Yeah.
Okay.
He didn't play a lot.
So training camp is where they're not able to play for college
Yeah,
players.
they come to development camp, and a lot of people asked me that question on X a couple days ago when the Blues announced that roster. And by the way, even the Blues, I think, go back and forth between calling it prospect camp and development camp, but it's essentially the same thing. But yeah, the college kids who can't, mess with their
because that's what I was wondering. I was like, man, was he at development camp?
Yeah, there's a couple days where he's either banged
injured.
up or didn't play.
Everybody is there this time around.
Yeah.
Like, you're getting to see the guys from Sweden, which I know they were there last year, but some of the guys didn't practice. Some of the guys were injured. Everybody's there. And they're doing a
when
scrimmage.
he says everybody. So the draft is the 28th and 29th in Vegas. I'll be out there for that. And
Jealous.
then I'm rubbing in on Alex.
Come on, man.
And then the development camp is July 1st through the 3rd.
Oh, wow.
Open a free agency.
I've been at a bunch of drafts where the Blues select player X and they put a jersey on, and he's standing next to me, the kid. He's 18 years old. He's so excited. He just got drafted. And then the Blues start saying, oh, by the way, you're leaving tomorrow, and you'll be in St. Louis on Saturday for the first day of a development camp.
Oh, yeah.
So these kids who are flying out to Vegas have no idea where they're going after Vegas.
Isn't that unbelievable?
Finding out they're coming to St. Louis.
How do you, I just can't imagine being an 18-year-old kid, that happening, and then you're moving on and you're going to this camp where there's going to be a lot of players. Like, I mean, obviously you're going to be one of the highly regarded ones, but still, you're probably going to be playing at a level that you have not played at yet. It's just the whole mental part of that to me is absolutely freaking fascinating. And handling that at 18, no way I could have done that.
And oh, by the way, you got Doug Armstrong, Al McInnes, all sitting
Keith Kachuk watching you. Yeah. Well, I mean, you're the new dog at the dog park, too, because, like, all the other guys that are there, they've done development camp for a year or 2 years, and so they already have done this show. Meanwhile, you're walking in and be like, where do I put my stuff? Where do I go?
Can I ask a really stupid question? This is a stupid question.
No stupid questions here.
No, this is probably stupid. But what is the point of the development camp. Is that just...
Donnie,
yeah, that is stupid.
what is the point of development?
Hey, he warned
camp?
us. He warned us.
No, listen, I
This is
understand.
why people say I'm angry.
But you understand. But I mean, these are already really great hockey players that already have a very high level of skill. I assume that you're just showing them how you're expected to do it as a Blue Note, and then it's also to give the organization an eyeball on the player and the person to see how much they've grown, to see how much they developed since they saw them last.
And
I think it's 2
ring
or
size
3
too,
fold.
right? Because isn't junior the ring size smaller, or is that?
No, it's regular.
That's regulation. Okay.
Yeah, no, I think it's 2 or 3 fold. One is it gives these kids a taste. So like they're at their junior hockey team or their college team all year long, and they're dreaming about one day being in St. Louis, but they don't know what it looks like. They've never been to St. Louis, and so now they're flying into St. Louis. They're seeing the rink, they're seeing the faces, meeting the equipment staff, all that stuff, and how excited that makes them when they go back to junior hockey or college. Hey, I saw it. I can be there. I know what it looks like. And then you mentioned the other one. Yeah, Doug and Keith and Scott Mellon, all these guys can go fly and see these players play for their team during the season, but now you got them all on the ice. And so when they have their organizational meetings, they say, hey, look, we saw development camp, and, this guy, he's a notch above that guy. And, it's not the best hockey because these guys, a lot of them haven't skated for a few weeks or a couple months, and they're getting situated here in St. Louis. But I think it does give the organization just a chance to peek at them. So it's a taste for the players, and then it's also a glimpse for the organization.
And so those guys get to compete in the prospect tournament too, correct?
Some of them, yeah.
So like
a
the
lot
college,
of the college kids.
so they won't be able
No.
to that tournament right before training camp,
Right.
because that's the one that's here this year at Centene, where it's Minnesota, Chicago, and Columbus, I think.
Just Chicago, Minnesota, and St. Louis.
Oh, okay, so just those 3 of them. But yeah, so the college kids won't be in that one, but the other ones that are there for training camp will
Yeah, they
be.
can't come to training camp, and then a lot of the European players, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, stay over in Europe to start their season. So you'll just see your junior players go to that.
And I know that this is on a much less degree. I understand what I'm about to say. But one of the reasons in which that I love the NFL so much is because that I feel as though that I am, that the season really kind of never stops. There's always, something else. And I kind of feel like, and it might just be because of my hockey fandom maybe taking a leap, but I feel like the NHL is starting to do a really good job of that as well, and giving us these milestones throughout the course of the year that make the offseason one feel like it's 2 weeks, but also to just kind of keep the hockey talk and keep the hockey chatter kind of top of mind. I really love it.
They do an awesome job. I mean, the only real dead period I would say is probably those middle weeks of July, end of July, once free agency dies down until you start training camp.
Thank God.
And that's when JR gets to go to the Lake of the Ozarks and celebrate, have a good time. But other than that, I mean, you're right. Playoffs to the draft to development camp to free agency, and then you get your dead period, then it's training camp, then it's preseason, then it's regular season. Like, there is no off season in hockey, it feels like.
I do think that it's kind of ridiculous, though, that the finals could end right before the start of July.
Could have ended a couple days ago.
I know, seriously,
right,
should have.
right. All right, so, gentlemen, I hate to do this, and I have to do this from time to time, but I have to go be on the radio.
Yep.
I've also realized over the course of the last 2 weeks that I think I hate the song My Own Worst Enemy from Lit more than I hate any other song that I play.
Okay, well, see, once again, music connoisseur, love him some My Own Worst Enemy.
But I completely get it. It's a great friggin' song. I'm not lying. I think I played that song 5,000 times. I just can't.
Here's where it comes with music for me, and I'm going to educate, I guess, Donnie, on this.
He's going to educate me on it. Oh, good.
That was so condescending. BK is rubbing
What's
off
up,
on me.
BK?
Jesus. That song reminds me of American Pie, and I love that song because of it. Because isn't that the song at the end of American Pie when they're all dancing at the dance, and then when they're at the hot dog place at the end of the movie?
I cannot remember.
I think that's the song, and somebody's going to tell us on YouTube that we're incorrect with this, but that's why I always listen to it, because it makes me think of American Pie, and then I go back and watch American Pie.
All I know is that when people start their day, they need something good to happen, whether it be their dog run up to them and lick them or whatever, or their kid, you send them off to school and you're proud of your kid. But what I need, and I just got it, is I need Donnie venting and saying, I just can't. When I get that, I'm ready to start my
It is your medicine.
Dudes, I got to tell you a story real quick, and then we're going to wrap this up. This doesn't have anything to do with anything. All right? So a few days ago, I'm in my garage just kind of like cleaning up or whatever. I got both of the garage doors open. I've got Keishi on, and I'm just, kind of messing around or whatever. Well, all of a sudden, I turn to my right, and there is a dog right there, scares the bejesus out of me because we don't have a dog. But this dog, man,
We don't have a dog.
this doggo is so friendly. I mean, just so friendly. Jumping on me, I'm petting him, talking to good boy. All right, so I know somebody's going to be looking for this dog. So we go out into my front yard and, kind of messing about. I'm keeping an eye on him, making sure he doesn't go anywhere. So eventually, guy in truck pulls up and gets out of the car and says, hey, blah, 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 whatever your name is, come on in. And as he's leaving, he says, next time I'm going to bring my gun.
Oh, to you or to the dog?
To the dog.
I'm going to say, damn. Oh, yeah, I would have called animal control on that one.
Dude, like, and it took me like a second. Like, he said it, and then he was gone before I was like, oh, dude, that's not cool. Like my
Oh, yeah, it
reaction
takes you
time
a
was
little
so delayed. And now, man, all I can think about is that gosh dang dog and just wishing that it was in my house getting all the belly rubs. You know what I'm saying?
My favorite part of that story is he says, I got to go be on the radio. I got to go. And then tells a rando dog story.
Yeah.
That finishes with, I'm going to come back with my gun next time.
Yeah, weird way to end the podcast, everybody.
That dog gets back into your garage, just close the damn garage and go inside.
That's not a bad idea,
No dog
man.
here.
I haven't seen anything. All right, anywho, sorry about that, guys.
No, it's
Next time I see you, I'm bringing my gun.
If we need to edit this in post, I completely understand.
This is phenomenal.
It is the Last Minute Blues podcast for our homeboy, Jeff Burton. It is our boy, Jeremy Rutherford, Alex Ferrario. I'm Donnie Fandango. Thanks for listening to Let's Go Blues.
The Last Minute Blues podcast. Hear more at 1057thepoint.com.